The unexpected champion. Sarah Chen stood at the entrance of the Galactic Academy of Excellence, her small frame dwarfed by the towering crystal spires that pierced the violet sky of Centauri Prime. The transport pod that had brought her from Earth seemed impossibly far away now, along with everything familiar and safe. At 11 years old, she was not only the youngest student ever admitted to the Academy, but also the first human to pass its rigorous entrance examinations. The achievement should have filled her with pride. Instead, her stomach churned with anxiety as she watched various alien species glide, float, and walk through the Academy's quantum gates. Student Chen, Sarah. Earth classification. Human. Please proceed to orientation. The AI's voice resonated in her mind, a feature of the universal translator implanted behind her left ear. She adjusted the collar of her regulation uniform, took a deep breath, and stepped forward. The orientation chamber was a vast amphitheater that seemed to defy physics, with seats arranged in impossible geometric patterns that somehow all had perfect views of the central platform. Sarah found herself directed to a seat between a crystalline being whose faceted surface reflected rainbow patterns and a tall, willowy creature with 6 arms and bioluminescent markings. A carbon-based bite. How quaint, the crystalline being chimed, its thoughts translating directly into Sarah's mind. I wasn't aware your species had developed sufficient neural capacity for Academy admission. Sarah bit back a sharp reply, remembering her mother's words. You're not just representing yourself there, Sarah. You're representing all of humanity. Instead, she smiled and focused on the holographic display materializing above the central platform. High Instructor 6427 appeared, their form a swirling collection of iridescent gases contained within a gravitational field. Welcome, new initiates, to the Galactic Academy of Excellence. You represent the finest minds from 57 star systems, selected for your extraordinary potential in neural processing and cognitive advancement. The instructor's form shifted, creating a complex display of mathematical equations that danced through the air. This year's primary challenge will test the limits of your species' cognitive capabilities. The neural processing competition will determine not only your placement within the Academy, but also your species' standing in the Galactic Educational Index. Sarah's heart raced. The Educational Index was crucial for humanity's position in galactic society. Their current ranking of 47th out of 57 meant limited access to advanced technologies and scientific knowledge. A strong performance could change everything. The competition begins tomorrow. 6427 continued. Each student will be connected to the quantum neural network for a series of increasingly complex problem-solving challenges. Your natural processing speed and adaptability will be measured against established galactic standards. The crystalline being beside Sarah emanated waves of smug confidence. My species has ranked in the top 5 for 3 centuries. We process information at quantum speeds. Processing speed isn't everything, Sarah murmured, more to herself than her neighbor. She'd learned that during the entrance exams, where her seemingly primitive human brain had somehow solved problems that should have been beyond her capabilities. The orientation continued with technical specifications and competition protocols, but Sarah's mind was already racing ahead, analyzing patterns in the way information was being presented. There was something familiar about the structure, something that reminded her of the games she used to play with her grandfather, a retired quantum computing engineer. As students filed out of the orientation chamber, High Instructor 6427 called out, "Student Chen, remain behind." Sarah's steps faltered as her fellow students departed, some casting curious glances in her direction. Once they were alone, the instructor's gaseous form condensed slightly, taking on a more focused appearance. Your presence here is unprecedented, Student Chen. There are those on the Academic Council who believe allowing human participation is premature. They fear your performance in the entrance examinations was anomalous. Sarah stood straighter, lifting her chin. With respect, High Instructor, the results speak for themselves. Indeed. 6427's form rippled with what might have been amusement. But tomorrow's competition will be different. You will be directly connected to the quantum neural network. No human has ever attempted this level of neural integration. The risk of cognitive overflow is significant. I understand the risks, Sarah replied, though her voice wavered slightly. She'd read the medical disclaimers, seen the concern in her parents' eyes when they signed the waivers. Do you? The instructor's form expanded, filling her field of vision with swirling patterns of light and gas. Your species relies heavily on electrochemical neural processes. The network operates on quantum principles. The disparity could overwhelm your consciousness in nanoseconds. Sarah took a deep breath, remembering her grandfather's words about quantum systems. The beauty of quantum mechanics, little star, is that the impossible becomes possible. You just have to look at it differently. I'm ready to try, she said firmly. Humanity deserves the chance to prove itself. The instructor's form contracted again. Very well. Report to Laboratory 7 at first light tomorrow. And Student Chen. Their voice took on a different tone, one that the translator struggled to interpret. Remember that sometimes the greatest discoveries come from the most unexpected sources. As Sarah left the orientation chamber, her mind was already working, processing patterns and possibilities. Tomorrow would either mark humanity's greatest step forward in galactic education or its most public failure. The weight of that responsibility should have terrified her. Instead, she felt a growing excitement. Because while her alien classmates saw her as primitive and limited, they didn't understand something fundamental about humans. They performed best when everyone else thought they couldn't succeed. She had 18 hours until the competition began. 18 hours to prepare for a challenge that no human had ever faced. Sarah Chen smiled as she headed toward her assigned quarters, her fear giving way to determination. Tomorrow, she would either make history or become a cautionary tale in the Academy's archives. Either way, the galaxy was about to learn something new about humanity. The Neural Challenge. Laboratory 7 hummed with quantum energy as Sarah Chen lay back in the neural interface chair. Around her, other students were being connected to similar interfaces, their varied anatomies requiring specialized equipment. The crystalline being from orientation, who she now knew as NX8, had been placed in a resonance chamber that pulsed with geometric patterns. Final safety check for human neural interface, announced the medical technician, a being composed of interwoven strands of living light. Be advised, Student Chen, that the first connection may cause significant discomfort. Your species' pain threshold data is limited. Sarah nodded, trying to keep her breathing steady as cool metallic tendrils extended from the headrest to make contact with her neural implant. She had spent the night studying everything she could access about quantum neural networks, though most of the technical specifications were well beyond her comprehension. Neural sync initiating in 3, 2, 1. The world exploded into impossible colors. Sarah's consciousness expanded, stretched, and fragmented. It felt like her mind was being pulled in 1,000 directions at once. She heard someone screaming and distantly realized it was her own voice. Neural patterns destabilizing, she heard the technician say, their voice seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere. Preparing emergency disconnect. No, Sarah forced the word out through gritted teeth. I can handle it. She focused on her grandfather's quantum computing lessons, on the way he taught her to visualize complex systems. The pain began to recede as her mind adapted, found patterns in the chaos. The quantum network crystallized around her consciousness. She was aware of the other students, their minds glowing like stars in a vast digital cosmos. Data flowed between them in streams of pure information, beautiful and terrifying in its complexity. Remarkable, she heard High Instructor 6427 say. The human's neural patterns are stabilizing. Beginning first trial. The initial challenge materialized in Sarah's expanded consciousness, a four-dimensional puzzle that required sorting quantum states across multiple probability waves. She watched as her fellow students attacked it with incredible speed, their thoughts moving at quantum rates she couldn't hope to match. Sarah's first attempt was clumsy, her human mind struggling to process multiple dimensions simultaneously. She finished last, her time so far behind the others that several students emanated waves of dismissive amusement. As expected, X8's thoughts resonated with smug satisfaction. Carbon-based neural systems simply lack the processing capacity for quantum computation. But as the trials continued, Sarah began to notice something. While her classmates processed each puzzle as pure mathematics, her human brain was making unexpected connections. She saw patterns that reminded her of music, of dance, of the way leaves fell in autumn wind. By the fourth trial, she had improved her time significantly. By the sixth, she was in the middle of the pack. The amusement from her fellow students had turned to confusion. Impossible. X8 broadcast. The human's performance curve defies all established models. The puzzles grew more complex. Probability cascades, quantum entanglement matrices, 11-dimensional topology problems. Sarah's human brain shouldn't have been able to comprehend them at all. But instead of fighting her biological limitations, she began working with them. Where others saw abstract quantum states, she saw colors and sounds. Complex probability calculations became rhythms, patterns she could feel rather than compute. Her mind began translating quantum mathematics into something uniquely human: intuition. Final trial of preliminary rounds. Announce ZIX 427. Top 30% advance to tomorrow's competition. The challenge that appeared was unlike anything they'd faced. A quantum maze that changed its configuration based on the observer's mental state. The more one tried to logically analyze it, the more complex it became. Sarah closed her eyes, stopped trying to think her way through it. Instead, she let her mind dance with the quantum possibilities, feeling the maze's rhythm, its pulse. She didn't solve it so much as flow through it, her consciousness moving in harmony with the shifting patterns. When she opened her eyes, the laboratory had fallen silent. The other students were radiating waves of shock and disbelief. She had finished first. Impossible. X8 broadcast again, their crystalline form vibrating with agitation. The human must have cheated. These results cannot be accurate. High Instructor ZIX 427's gaseous form swirled thoughtfully. The quantum network monitors all neural activity. Student X8. There is no possibility of deception. Student Chen's approach was unexpected, but entirely valid. As the neural interface disconnected, Sarah's consciousness contracted back to its normal dimensions. Her head throbbed and her nose was bleeding slightly, but she couldn't stop smiling. She had qualified for the advanced rounds. More importantly, she had discovered something crucial. Humans weren't limited by their primitive neural processing after all. They just processed things differently. Where quantum beings thought in pure mathematics, humans thought in metaphors, in stories, in connections that transcended pure logic. As she left Laboratory 7 on shaking legs, Sarah heard snippets of conversation from the other students, their thoughts leaking through lingering neural connections. Did you see how she approached the maze? The patterns she created in the quantum field. Perhaps we have underestimated. High Instructor ZIX 427 called out just before she reached the door. Student Chen. She turned, still dizzy from the neural interface. Tomorrow's challenges will be significantly more demanding, they said. The quantum complexity will increase exponentially. No human has ever attempted neural integration at these levels. Sarah nodded, wiping the blood from her nose. I understand, instructor. But I think we've all discovered today that humans might be capable of more than anyone expected. As she walked back to her quarters, Sarah's mind was already preparing for tomorrow. She had proved that humanity belonged at the academy. Now she had to prove they could excel there. The real challenge was just beginning. Breaking barriers. News of Sarah Chen's performance in the preliminary trials spread through the Galactic Academy like a quantum wave collapse. As she entered the advanced training laboratory the next morning, she could feel the shift in how others perceived her. The dismissive amusement was gone, replaced by wary curiosity, and from some thinly veiled concern. The laboratory itself had changed. Gone were the basic neural interface chairs, replaced by full immersion pods filled with quantum suspension fluid. Sarah's heart rate quickened as she saw the breathing apparatus. The advanced trials require complete neural immersion, explained Dr. Vex, a serpentine being whose scales shifted color with their thoughts. Your consciousness will be fully integrated into the quantum network. There will be no physical awareness, no anchor to your biological form. Sarah swallowed hard, watching as other students were already being lowered into their pods. Through the transparent walls, she could see their bodies suspended in the iridescent fluid, their minds already connecting to realms she could barely imagine. There is still time to withdraw, Dr. Vex added, their scales flickering with what might have been concern. No one would question. I'm ready, Sarah interrupted, stepping toward her assigned pod. She removed her shoes and academy uniform, replacing them with the neural conductive bodysuit that would help maintain her vital signs during immersion. As the pod opened with a soft hiss, Dr. Vex's scales turned a deep indigo. Your species' neural architecture was never designed for this level of quantum integration. The risks are necessary, Sarah finished. Humanity will never advance if we're too afraid to take the next step. She thought of Earth, of her family, of all the hopes riding on her performance. Sometimes you have to break barriers to prove they never should have existed in the first place. The quantum suspension fluid was surprisingly warm as she was lowered into it. The breathing apparatus fitted itself automatically, and she forced herself to take slow, steady breaths as the fluid rose past her face. The last thing she saw before the pod sealed was Dr. Vex's scales, shifting to a color she'd never seen before. Then everything changed. The quantum network at this level wasn't just a sea of data. It was reality itself, stripped down to its most fundamental elements. Sarah's consciousness expanded beyond anything she'd experienced in the preliminary trials. She could see feel slashed, taste the quantum foam of space-time, the endless dance of particles blinking in and out of existence. Around her, the other students' minds blazed like supernovas, their thoughts moving at speeds that should have been impossible to comprehend. But Sarah had learned from yesterday's trials. Instead of trying to match their pure computational speed, she opened herself to a different way of understanding. The first advanced challenge appeared, a quantum encryption protocol that required simultaneously maintaining multiple contradictory states. The other students attacked it with brutal mathematical efficiency, their minds splitting the problem into billions of calculations per nanosecond. Sarah approached it differently. Where they saw equations, she saw music. The quantum states became harmonies and discords, a symphony of possibility. She didn't solve the encryption. She conducted it, letting the patterns flow through her consciousness like a cosmic orchestra. Remarkable. She heard High Instructor 6427 observe from somewhere beyond normal space. The human's neural patterns are creating entirely new quantum configurations. More challenges followed, each more demanding than the last. Problems that should have required quantum processing speeds far beyond human capability. But Sarah's mind kept finding new ways to translate quantum mathematics into human understanding. Abstract probabilities became colors, 11-dimensional spaces became dances, quantum entanglement became poetry. Not everyone was impressed by her unconventional methods. This is not a game of metaphors. X8's thoughts cut through the quantum field. These are serious computational challenges, not some primitive's art project. But Sarah was beyond caring about their approval now. She had found something far more important. Proof that humanity's supposed limitations were actually advantages. Their ability to think in symbols and stories, to find patterns in chaos, to imagine the impossible. These weren't weaknesses. They were evolutionary gifts that even quantum beings didn't possess. The final challenge of the day appeared. A quantum AI simulation that required predicting the behavior of a system so complex it defied traditional analysis. The other students hesitated, their brilliant minds for once uncertain how to proceed. Sarah dove in without hesitation. She didn't try to predict the eye's behavior through pure calculation. Instead, she tried to understand its story. What was it trying to achieve? What patterns guided its evolution? What symphony was it trying to compose? The solution came to her not as an equation, but as a feeling, a deep intuitive understanding of the eye's quantum dance. When she opened her eyes back in the physical world, she was surprised to find tears mixing with the suspension fluid. Neural immersion complete, Dr. Vex announced as the pod began to drain. Student Chen has succeeded. She has qualified for tomorrow's championship trials. Sarah's body felt heavy as gravity reasserted itself, but her mind was soaring. She had done more than just qualify. She had demonstrated an entirely new way of approaching quantum computation, a way that combined the best of human intuition with the power of quantum processing. As she changed back into her uniform, she overheard two instructors' conversation. The humans' methods are unorthodox, but the results. Could this change how we approach quantum education entirely? The council will need to reevaluate. High Instructor 6427 approached as she prepared to leave. Their gaseous form was cycling through colors she'd never seen before. You have forced us to question our assumptions, Student Chen. Tomorrow's championship trial will be unprecedented. Sarah nodded, too exhausted for words. She had proven that humanity deserved a place at the Academy. Tomorrow, she would prove they deserved a place among the stars. As she walked back to her quarters, her mind still resonating with quantum harmonies, she smiled. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the most powerful solutions come not from pure computation, but from the ability to see the poetry in the mathematics of the universe. The final test. The championship trial chamber was unlike anything Sarah had seen before. The quantum immersion pods were arranged in a perfect circle, their surfaces etched with symbols that seemed to shift and change when she wasn't looking directly at them. Only 5 pods remained active, one for each finalist. The championship trial is unique, High Instructor 6427 announced, their gaseous forms spreading to fill the upper portion of the chamber. Today, you will not merely solve quantum problems. You will face the convergence. A murmur of excitement rippled through the assembled observers. Even X8's crystalline form vibrated with anticipation. Sarah noticed Dr. Vex's scales had turned a color that made her eyes hurt to look at. The convergence, Zix 427 continued, is a quantum intelligence that exists beyond conventional space-time. It poses a unique challenge to each participant, one that reflects their deepest capabilities and limitations. No two beings experience the same test. Sarah approached her pod, trying to keep her hands from shaking. The quantum suspension fluid seemed different today, darker, with swirls of energy that moved with apparent intelligence. Be advised, Dr. Vex announced, their scales rippling with concern, that the convergence's neural interface is significantly more intense than previous trials. The boundary between self and quantum reality becomes uncertain. As Sarah settled into the pod, she heard X8's crystalline chime. Try not to let your primitive consciousness dissolve completely, human. It would be unfortunate if your species' first champion was reduced to quantum noise. The fluid rose around her, and Sarah closed her eyes. She had come too far to let fear stop her now. The breathing apparatus sealed, and the world dissolved. She found herself in nothing. Not darkness, not light, not even the quantum foam of previous trials. This was a void that existed between possibilities, a space where reality itself was negotiable. The other finalists were there too, their consciousnesses burning like newborn stars in the nothingness. Then the convergence arrived. It wasn't a presence so much as a transformation of the void itself. The nothing became everything, all at once. Sarah's mind reeled as it tried to process the unprocessable. She felt the other finalists retreat into their quantum mathematics, seeking patterns in the chaos. WLCOMM, the convergence communicated, its thoughts manifesting as ripples through possibility itself. You seek and understanding. The void shifted, And suddenly Sarah was experiencing every possible version of herself simultaneously. She was on Earth and 1,000 other worlds. She was young and old, past and future, everything and nothing. This is the nature of reality. The convergence continued. Not mathematics, not logic. Po is society violate. The other finalists were struggling. Their quantum minds, so adept at processing pure mathematics, couldn't grasp this level of uncertainty. Even X8's brilliant crystalline consciousness was fracturing under the strain of infinite possibility. But Sarah's human mind, evolved to deal with uncertainty and contradiction, adapted. Where the others sought equations, she found stories. Each possibility was a narrative thread in an infinite tapestry of reality. Demonstrate understanding, the convergence commanded. The challenge materialized. A quantum matrix so complex it contained every possible solution simultaneously. The task wasn't to find the right answer. It was to understand why every answer was right from its own perspective. The other finalists attacked the problem with increasing desperation. They tried to calculate the perfect solution, not realizing that perfection itself was a limitation. Sarah saw X8's consciousness splinter as they tried to compute every possibility at once. But Sarah remembered something her grandfather had told her about quantum mechanics. The universe doesn't care about perfect answers, little star. It cares about interesting questions. Instead of trying to solve the matrix, she opened herself to it. She let each possibility tell its story, each potential reality sing its song. The quantum matrix wasn't a problem to be solved. It was a conversation to be had. Interesting. The convergence resonated. You do not seek to control. You seek to understand. The void shifted again, and Sarah found herself in a space between spaces. The quantum matrix had become a living thing, its possibilities weaving together like threads in a cosmic loom. She realized that the true test wasn't about finding the right answer. It was about understanding why there was no single right answer. Your species is young, the convergence observed. But you who and what older race is, heavy forgotten. Reality is not a calculation. It is a story that due to our ITs, ITs. With that understanding, Sarah did something unprecedented. Instead of trying to solve the quantum matrix, she joined its dance. Her consciousness merged with the possibilities, not to control them, but to learn from them. Each potential reality became a note in a universe-spanning symphony. The other finalists watched in astonishment as the matrix responded to her approach. Instead of collapsing into a single solution, it remained in a state of dynamic possibility, exactly as it was meant to be. Completion, the convergence announced. The human demonstrate is true understanding. The void began to fade, reality reasserting itself. As her consciousness returned to her body, Sarah heard the convergence's final message. Your species has muchich to teach, and muchich to learn. She opened her eyes to find the championship chamber in chaos. The observers were talking all at once, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of excitement and disbelief. Dr. Vex's scales were cycling through colors so rapidly they became a blur. Impossible. X8 managed, their crystalline forms still vibrating from the experience. She didn't solve the matrix. She communed with it. High Instructor X427's gaseous form had condensed into a tight, brilliant point of light. Student Chen has demonstrated something beyond mere quantum computation. She has shown us a new way of understanding reality itself. Sarah sat up slowly, her head spinning from the neural interface. She had done more than win a competition. She had proven that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in competing with quantum minds. It was in bringing their unique perspective to the universe. As the chamber erupted in discussion about the implications of what they'd witnessed, Sarah smiled. The galaxy was about to change, and humanity would help write its next chapter. A new understanding. The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Academy hummed with excitement. Representatives from every spacefaring civilization had gathered to witness what many were already calling a paradigm shift in quantum education. Sarah Chen stood before them, still wearing her student uniform, feeling impossibly small beneath the vast crystalline dome. High Instructor Zix-427's gaseous form swirled at the podium, their voice resonating through the neural translators. For millennia, we have assumed that advancement in quantum understanding required ever-increasing computational speed. Student Chen's performance in the convergence trial has demonstrated that we may have been fundamentally mistaken. The assembled beings stirred, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of reaction. Sarah spotted Dr. Vex in the crowd, their scales now displaying patterns she'd never seen before, ones that seemed to echo the quantum harmonies she'd experienced in the trial. The human approach to quantum reality, Zix-427 continued, offers insights that pure computation cannot achieve. Their ability to process information through metaphor, through narrative, through what they call intuition represents an evolutionary adaptation we had previously dismissed as primitive. Inx-8 floated forward, their crystalline form significantly altered from the championship trial. The once perfect geometric patterns were now interwoven with organic curves, an unprecedented adaptation for their species. I speak for the crystalline consensus. They chimed, their thoughts tinged with a new humility. We have long prided ourselves on our quantum processing speed, believing it made us superior. Student Chen has shown us that speed alone is not understanding. There are patterns within patterns that only become visible when viewed through different perspectives. Sarah stepped forward at Zix-427's gesture. Her voice, small but steady, carried through the hall. Humans don't think faster than quantum beings. We don't calculate better. We just think differently. Where you see equations, we see stories. Where you seek perfect solutions, we find beautiful questions. She paused, remembering the infinite possibilities she'd experienced in the convergence. The universe isn't just mathematics. It's also poetry. It's art. It's music. Every civilization brings its own way of understanding, and only by combining them all can we see the full picture. The Galactic Educational Council materialized in the center of the hall. 12 beings of pure energy who rarely intervened in Academy affairs. Their presence caused the very fabric of reality to ripple. The human insight is valuable. They communicated simultaneously. The educational index must be restructured. No longer will species be ranked solely by computational efficiency. Understanding takes many forms. A holographic display appeared above the assembly, showing humanity's ranking shooting upward from 47th to 15th. But more importantly, the entire ranking system was changing, becoming more nuanced, acknowledging different forms of intelligence and understanding. Furthermore, the Council continued, we propose the establishment of a new department within the Academy. The Institute of Hybrid Quantum Cognition will explore the integration of different species approaches to understanding reality. Sarah felt tears in her eyes as she realized what this meant. She hadn't just won a competition. She'd helped open a door for humanity's unique gifts to be recognized and valued across the galaxy. Dr. Vex's approach, their scales now settling into a deep, peaceful blue. We would be honored if you would consider staying at the Academy, Student Chen. There is much we could learn from each other. Sarah smiled, thinking of home, of Earth, of all the other humans who might now have the chance to share their perspectives with the galaxy. I'd like that, she said. But first, I think Earth needs to know what happened here. There are millions of humans who think differently, who see patterns in unique ways. They just need the chance to show what they can do. High Instructor Zix-427 expanded their form in agreement. You have begun something remarkable, Student Chen. The integration of human intuition with quantum understanding, could revolutionize everything from space travel to artificial intelligence. The assembly was breaking up into excited discussion groups, with representatives from various species already planning collaborations and exchanges. Sarah saw members of traditionally opposed civilizations finding common ground in their excitement about the possibilities ahead. "You know," Nx8 chimed softly, floating beside her, "I never properly thank you. My species has begun to explore new ways of thinking, inspired by your approach. We are evolving." Sarah watched the activity around her, feeling both exhausted and exhilarated. She had come to the academy hoping to prove that humans belonged among the stars. Instead, she had helped show that every species, every way of thinking, had something unique to contribute to the universal conversation. As the assembly concluded, High Instructor Zix 427 made one final announcement. "Let it be recorded that on this day, the galaxy learned a crucial lesson from its youngest spacefaring civilization. The future of understanding lies not in competing to be the best, but in combining our unique perspectives to see the full beauty of reality." Sarah Chen, the 11-year-old human who had changed galactic education, stood beneath the crystalline dome and smiled. The story of humanity among the stars was just beginning, and it promised to be more beautiful and strange than anyone had imagined. In the quantum realm between possibilities, the convergence observed and understood. The universe had just become a much more interesting place.